Good afternoon, everyone. This is Cameron Fowler, Continuum of Care Director with the Texas Homeless Network. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. In the room from THN, we have Caitlin, our Programs Coordinator, Sophia, our Systems Change Coordinator, and Mary, our CoC Program Manager. Just wanted to remind you all, if you have questions, please use the icon to raise your hand, or feel free to use the chat box. We've also downloaded 5 handouts that we're going to be reviewing today. You can download those during the webinar. They're also all available on our website. And I'm seeing that folks can't hear me. Is that still an issue? Okay. Thank you, Jesse and Jenny. So we're going to go ahead and get started. To start us off this afternoon, Mary is going to be reviewing our flowchart for the competition process and going over the NOFA summary. And again, all of these documents have been posted on our website. The summary and the RFP and the application and evaluation were posted Friday, along with an updated timeline. We're going to be reviewing all of that with you all today and are happy to answer any and all questions you have. We know that this process can be a little anxiety-provoking, and we want to make it as smooth as possible. So we're trying to give you all the information we can today. And again, please feel free to ask questions when you have them. And I'm going to hand it over to Mary.
Thank you, Cameron. All right, so we decided to start today with the bigger picture view, and then we're working our way narrowing down to our CoC's particular competition process. So the first document we want to look at is this graphic that shows our application process for the HUD Continuum of Care Program grant competition this year. The first set of boxes here at the top, on the top arrow, are for applicants, and so that part of the process is describing what you as a project applicant need to be doing. You'll see across the top are the yellow bars where I've included some dates. We've already passed the first box, or yellow dates, of June 28th through July 7th, and that corresponds to the blue box below where you as potential project applicants could have been reading HUD's NOFA and application materials. There aren't that many application materials right now, but the NOFA is definitely out. And then look at your renewal project in an evaluative way, or look at designing a new project. Starting today in the next set of boxes, which will be happening for the next month, July 8th through August, or Friday was July 8th through August 8th, you can be reading our CoC's request for proposals, or RFP, and all of the application materials that we have available. Over the next few weeks, and definitely by August 8th, you'll want to complete HUD's project application in eSnaps whenever HUD releases it, and of course submit all your materials to us. And please make sure that you meet that due date and not turn in anything late. Then you all won't have to do anything for the next month, August 9th through September 9th, unless we have questions about your application and need you to make some changes. Then September 10th through 14th, in that final phase, that's when we'll ask you to actually submit your project application in eSnaps. We want you to complete it by August 8th, but not hit the submit button until the very end of our process, because it's a lot easier to make changes within that document if you haven't submitted it yet. So really 4 steps. Read all the materials, complete all the materials for the CoC, complete HUD's materials, and submit HUD's application. Below that, the arrow talks about the process that's going on overall that's not only for applicants, and that is where THN, as the CoC lead agency, our staff drafted an RFP and the applications, and our board is following along on the process. So HUD releases their information, we at THN take that to run the required CoC level competition. So we posted all those materials last Friday. Of course, a caveat that we'll be saying a lot throughout this webinar is that things might change based on what HUD releases in the applications or any other materials related to the competition. We're going to be providing a little bit of training and technical assistance throughout the next few weeks. Then once you submit your applications by August 8th, we'll be taking a look at them for a threshold review and then the big review by our independent review team who's actually going to score the applications. Then they and our staff will make ranking recommendations. The board will review and approve all of that. And finally, we will submit what's called the consolidated application to HUD by HUD's due date of September 14th. So again, just kind of a snapshot of what's happening here for applicants. You're the top set of boxes. Of course, renewal projects, you'll complete the renewal project evaluation and attachments. New projects will complete the new project application and attachments. And THN will work with you all throughout the process to make sure everything is submitted to HUD by the September 14th due date. All right, then we're going to go ahead and move on to the NOFA summary. We created this document for all of us to really focus on the most important parts of what HUD calls their NOFA, or a Notice of Funding Availability for their Continuum of Care program. So we start with the purposes of the CoC program, which I think are always good to review. It's designed to promote a community-wide commitment to the goal of ending homelessness, to provide funding for efforts to quickly rehouse individuals while minimizing trauma and dislocation caused by homelessness, to promote access to and effective utilization of mainstream programs by people experiencing homelessness, and to optimize self-sufficiency among people experiencing homelessness. So again, HUD releases a Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA, which they did this year on June 28th. The entire program across the country is making available about $1.9 billion to serve people experiencing homelessness. And one of the requirements of this program is that every continuum of care, like the Balanced Estate Continuum of Care, is required to hold a CoC level competition. And the project applications that go through that competition will get scored and ranked, and then we as a CoC submit all the applications to HUD in ranked order. So that's going to be the bulk of our webinar today, is talking about this CoC level competition that we're having. So the next section just talks about the application structure. There are 3 pieces that get sent to HUD, and those 3 pieces together are called the consolidated application. The first piece is called the CoC application, and it includes information about the CoC overall, the planning, the governance structure, overall performance, HMIS data, coordinated entry, all the kinds of things that we work on as a CoC year-round. That application is scored by HUD, and it in part determines how quickly the funding is awarded to us. So the higher we score on the CoC application, indicating the more effective we are in preventing and ending homelessness, the better chance that we will get all of our projects funded. The second piece of the consolidated application are the project applications, and that's those new and renewal applications that you all will be submitting as project applications. Third is the CoC priority listing, and that is the ranked order of the projects that we send to HUD so that they know our top priority project and then which ones are ranked below that. And that is a required step HUD mandates that every continuum of care go through. So that's not a local decision or a CoC decision, that is a HUD decision. All right, so some highlights of this year's NOFA. Similar to last year, the scoring criteria is very focused on HUD's policy priorities. funding is to support the goals of that program and HUD's policy priorities. Also, the CoC application itself has been restructured. Well, we don't know yet because it hasn't actually come out, but generally what happens is they slightly tweak it every year to really try to make it as useful as possible to us for not only applying for grant funding, but really using that document for our year-round planning and operating efforts. There is a permanent housing bonus. There are only 2 folks that are eligible to apply for the permanent housing bonus. New permanent supportive housing projects that will exclusively serve chronically homeless individuals and families, or new rapid rehousing projects that will serve individuals and families coming directly from the streets or emergency shelters, and includes persons fleeing domestic violence situations and other persons meeting the criteria of paragraph 4 of the definition of homeless. Finally, the tiering system, what HUD calls tiers, is happening again this year. Tier 1 is equal to 93% of what's called our annual renewal demand. So the annual renewal demand is how much money would it take to refund or renew every project that is currently getting funding from the 2015 competition. So 93% of that amount is about $4.1 million. So what HUD is saying is if a CoC scores really well, we can assume that about 93% of our money will in fact come back to the CoC. So that the projects that end up being ranked in that tier can feel more comfortable that they are more likely to get funded. Tier 2, however, is a tier that's equal to 7% of the ARD, which is about $313,000, plus any amount available for the permanent housing bonus, which is up to 5% of what's called our final pro rata need, or the amount of money that we could apply for just based on our geography. 5% of our FPRN is about $1.8 million. So you'll see that there is quite a bit of money this year available for permanent housing bonus projects within our CoC. So we're hoping to see some projects, new permanent supportive housing or new rapid rehousing, applying for those bonus funds to get more housing in our CoC. All right, the next page, I'm just going to quickly go through HUD's homeless policy and program priorities. Again, these are what guide us in this entire process of applying and carrying out this program. First is creating a systemic response to homelessness. You've heard us talk a lot about this over the past year or so with coordinated entry, planning as a system, measuring system performance, not only individual project performance. A couple of other bullet points that I think are really very client-friendly are promoting participant choice and making the delivery of homeless assistance more open, inclusive, and transparent. Second is strategically allocating resources. HUD expects that all CoCs are comprehensively reviewing project quality, performance, and cost effectiveness. We want to make sure we're linking people to mainstream and community-based resources as much as possible. We want to make sure we're reviewing the performance and the need for our transitional housing projects, and we'll be talking a lot more about that in today's webinar. And then integrating people into the community, specifically people who meet that definition of chronically homeless and have a disability. Third is ending chronic homelessness. Again, we want to target persons with the highest needs and the longest histories of homelessness for existing and new permanent supportive housing. So helping those folks that are in highest need. Also, we want to increase the number of units available to serve people who meet the definition of chronically homeless, as well as improving our outreach to find people and bring them into the housing if that's what they're looking for. The next three you'll see are very familiar, from opening doors, as is chronic homelessness, it's to end family homelessness, end youth homelessness, and end veteran homelessness. Number 7 is a big one we're focusing on this year in the CoC as well, using a housing first approach. Some of the components of that are using data to quickly and stably house homeless persons, engaging landlords and property owners, removing barriers to entry into the program, and adopting client-centered service methods. And I want to point out that last sentence there, for the FY 2016 competition, the TX BoS CoC requires that all projects applying for CoC program funds will use a housing first model. So if you're planning to apply this year, you will need to use a housing first model in your project. All right, on the next page, we've listed just briefly the categories of application threshold requirements. HUD is going to be looking at your applications as well in 5 categories before awarding: project eligibility, project quality, project renewal, all those are thresholds, the certification of consistency with the consolidated plan, and environmental requirements for your project. So you'll want to look at the NOFA for the details on that. And then we also included the label as CoC scoring criteria, but these are the exact elements that our continuum of care application, that overall application that represents the entire CoC, not individual projects, will be scored on, and there's a total of 200 points available. Oh, and I left in here and 3 bonus points. Actually, I think that is no longer true for this year. CoC coordination and engagement, you'll see, is 43 points. So a significant chunk, about a quarter of the points for CoC coordination and engagement, and then HUD spells out what are all the components of that. About 30 points are going to be awarded for how we rank and review and analyze the capacity of the projects getting funded by a Continuum of Care program. Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS, 18 points. But we wanted to make a note that while the HMIS section specifically is only 18 points, most of the CoC application relies on the data that comes out of HMIS. So we didn't want to make it look like HMIS wasn't as important as it truly is in this entire application. The point in time count is worth 9 points. Here's a significant change from last year's system performance at 40 points. Again, this is not performance of individual projects, it's performance of our system across the entire CoC. And finally, performance and strategic planning. And that's where we tell HUD how we're working to end chronic homelessness, ending homelessness among households with children, ending youth homelessness, and ending veteran homelessness. So that piece of the consolidated application, which again is called the CoC application, Texas Homeless Network staff write that with the data and information from the CoC. So you don't have to worry about writing that one, but we will certainly be sharing it with you, and it will guide our work for the upcoming year. And finally, we wanted to make sure that you knew that there is an appeals process that HUD has written into this competition process, and 4 different types of appeals are described in the NOFA: for solo applicants, for denied or decreased funding, for issues related to consolidated plan certification, and for issues where 2 different CoCs might be competing over the same project. So just know that that appeals process is there and you can read more about it. Finally, we have a footnote here that we recognize that the point values in a couple of these categories are slightly off: the project ranking, review, and capacity section, and the systems performance section. And we have submitted a question to HUD for clarification on that, but we have not yet received an answer. So when we do, we will certainly pass that along to you. So again, we've reviewed the process And now we've given you a summary of the NOFA. And next, we are going to get into our specific CoC's competition details. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. This is Cameron again. I am going to review some kind of key highlights in the RFP with all of you. And that's going to include our competition deadline calendar. So this document is almost 30 pages. I'm not going to read it all to you all. Don't worry. Just want to kind of hit some key points. And once I've gone through this, Caitlin is going to review the application, the new application, and the renewal project evaluation, and those required forms. And again, if you all have questions, feel free to use the chat box or raise your hand. Just want to let you all know the NOFA was released on June 28th. HUD was kind of sneaky about it. We didn't actually get official notice until the following day, but luckily we had some folks keeping an eye on things that were able to let us know that that had happened. I do want to point out CoC transparency, and if there is any grantee that's having any challenges reading or understanding the application process, or, and most specifically, anyone with limited English proficiency, to please contact Mary. Her email is there on the RFP. We want to make sure that that is not a barrier for anyone. This is very important. So applicants are required to view the following resources on the HUD Exchange. We've listed HUD's training on CoC program components and eligible cost. We've listed HUD's training on CoC program administration, and we've also strongly recommended every applicant, renewal or new, thoroughly review the CoC interim rule. So just want to repeat, these resources are available to you all for a reason. We find them to be very helpful. We feel they will answer a lot of your questions about administering these projects, and we really, again, are requiring you all review these, and please do that before you start asking us specific questions about component types or match or leverage, because really most all of the information is here for you, and HUD has done a really great job this year with these updated training options. We were quite pleased as we went through them. So Mary mentioned, I'm moving on to funding available. I want to make sure everyone hears me say that grant terms will be limited to 1-year grant terms. The only exception to that is going to be bonus projects that are doing construction, new construction, acquisition, or rehabilitation. Otherwise, all projects will be limited to 1-year grant term. This is a decision we made after the cuts in the competition last year. We just want to make certain that we are getting the most projects funded as possible, and did see last year that some of our projects that applied for more than a 1-year term could have potentially knocked some other folks out. We do not want that to happen again. Also want to remind you all that admin budget line items are going to be limited to 7% of the total amount of your requested from HUD. This is nothing new for our renewal projects. That's what's indicated on the GIW, but just want to make that clear for new projects. So, and funding for new projects in 2016 is limited. Those will come from, one, any voluntary reallocation of existing projects, mandatory reallocation of existing projects, and then the new permanent housing funding bonus. I also want to point out to you all, this is kind of an important paragraph here at the beginning. I think most of you all are aware that along with all of several cuts to our projects, THN lost our HMIS grants. We've had 2 projects come forward that are not planning to reallocate due to match and leverage issues, and also feeling they will not be able to meet the Housing First components that are required in the Texas Balance of State this year. So we are going to be able to reallocate some of that funding towards our HMIS. We are in the process of working with our board to determine where the rest of that money is going to come from. And we're currently looking at a few options. One is a flat percentage across all renewal and new projects. The other option is looking at a history of unspent funds. And we've, as you all know, we need HMIS to operate the CoC. Again, we're working with the board to do this in the most equitable manner, and many factors will go into this decision. You all will be notified in advance of your final due date to allow for any budget adjustments. I just wanted to make sure that that was very clear. And I know you all have probably already, read through this RFP a few times, but just in case you haven't, pay attention to that. Reallocation of existing funds. Just one thing I wanted to point out. I think, again, most of you are aware the CoC board voted as a result of the 2015 cuts that the Texas Balance of State CoC will no longer be funding transitional housing projects. And I just want to remind reallocated projects that they may request no more funding than they currently receive for their existing project. So if an applicant's current transitional housing projects receives $100,000 in CoC program funding, that is what they will be requesting for 2016. We still anticipate there may or may not be a project or two that makes a decision not to compete. If that is the case, once HMIS is funded, there may be an opportunity for some of those applications to be awarded some additional funding. Again, that's if a project fails to renew or if there are other funds reallocated. And I see a question from Michelle regarding HMIS. Michelle, our board is going to determine that, but right now they are leaning towards every project. If we do a kind of flat across the board, from each project to fund HMIS, they are leaning towards that includes DV projects. And the reason for that is while we don't hold your data, we still are required to have HMIS for the AHAR, the PIT, system-wide performance measures. All of the other work we do in HMIS does include the data from our DV projects. So going through reallocations in whole or part from existing renewal projects to create one or more new projects. Again, Mary stated this, new permanent supportive housing projects, all beds will be dedicated for use by chronically homeless individuals and families. Rapid rehousing projects that serve homeless individuals and families coming directly from the streets or shelter and include those fleeing domestic violence. New supportive service only projects specifically and only for centralized or coordinated entry and assessment systems, and new dedicated HMIS projects. Again, that can only be applied for by THN. We're also, again, working closely with our projects that have been required to reallocate, and I just, again, want to point this out. Initial reallocation decisions have already been confirmed. We really want grantees to carefully analyze their projects, and this is for renewals as well, to determine if reapplication or reallocation makes sense. Based on our new requirements, the new 150% leverage requirements, and as well as the PSH, all of our PSH projects being dedicated to the chronically homeless. So again, I'm asking reallocated projects to really carefully analyze and ensure that reallocation to a different component makes sense based on their current target population, physical configuration, and community need. And also, I'll address renewal projects, making some of those decisions as well. The permanent housing bonus, as Mary mentioned, it looks like it's going to be approximately around $1,820,340 for new projects. Again, Those new projects are new permanent supportive housing that serve 100% chronically homeless, so 100% dedicated, and new rapid rehousing projects that serve homeless individuals and families coming directly from the streets or shelters, including those fleeing domestic violence. This is another important thing to note that we'll also review in the deadline, but a letter of intent to apply for new permanent housing bonus projects is required and must be submitted to me, Cameron Fowler, at cameron@thn.org by July 15th at 5 p.m. It doesn't need to be long. We need to know your project type and your total budget amount. If you have additional details at that time, we would love to see them. If you want to apply for a bonus, you must submit a letter of intent by the 15th at 5 p.m. If we do not receive a letter from intent, you will not be eligible to compete in competition. I'm just repeating that. All projects must comply with THN's new leverage requirements, new housing first, and low barrier requirements. So any projects listed, and we'll show you all in our appendices, planning not to renew, and this is what I was referencing earlier. So if you sit down with your staff, with your board, look at these new requirements and really do not feel that this funding is a good fit for your project any longer, we have to be notified that same date, July 15th. It is so important that we be made aware of this decision by this date. In the past, balance of state grantees have decided not to compete, and they've done so late in the competition that the entire CoC lost funding, and that is funding we cannot get back. And right now we are in no position to lose any additional funding. So again, any project that is a renewal or a reallocation that after reviewing this RFP makes a decision not to compete, in order for us to maintain that funding and to reallocate it within the CoC, you must notify me no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, July 15th. If your project decides not to compete at a later date during the competition, that agency will be held responsible for the CoC's potential permanent loss of program funds, and that agency will be deemed ineligible to apply in future competitions. I'm going to repeat that. The agency will be deemed ineligible to apply in future competitions. Does anybody have any questions about the letter of intent or the letter indicating you will not be reallocating or reapplying? Okay, just want to make sure that is crystal clear. I see we have some questions coming in. We'll get to them if we haven't answered them already. So I'm moving on to CoC program components, and just want to talk again. These are the program components eligible under the CoC program. So permanent housing. For new bonus permanent housing, funds may be used for acquisition, rehabilitation, new construction, leasing assistance, operating and supportive services. Permanent housing encompasses permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. I'm not going to go in depth on each of these program components. I strongly encourage you all to do so. And we get into eligible persons to be served. Again, these are pulled straight from HUD. These are those folks that meet the definition of homelessness as defined in the HEARTH Act. And just want to again remind everyone, and actually when we get to page 7 you will see it, dedication and prioritization in permanent supportive housing projects is going to be a requirement. Just let me know if you need me to answer any. Which one? Sorry, we're reading questions, y'all. those projects shut down. So Michelle, we'll get to your question about TH eligible for RRH later. Does the letter of intent apply to bonus projects that are rapid rehousing focused? The letter of intent applies to any bonus project. Any new project must submit a letter of intent. It does not apply to renewal projects. Okay. Or ask him to type it in. That's an individual conversation we can have after. So John, that question we need to discuss. I can't answer that question without knowing what component type you want to apply for that collaborative. Cheryl, I feel like we've answered both your questions.
We have another Cheryl that says when you say PSH must serve chronically homeless, does that include rapid rehousing projects? PSH is not our.
Right, that does not include rapid rehousing projects. So yeah, permanent supportive housing projects must serve 100% chronically homeless dedicated. Rapid rehousing projects do not have to serve the chronically homeless, but can. And in the RFP, we've listed who is eligible for rapid rehousing. Okay, just to clarify to you all, permanent housing includes permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing, right? And each of those project components, while permanent housing, have different eligible target populations.
And the acronyms that you'll see for those, PSH is permanent supported housing, which falls under that umbrella of permanent housing, which is a component type that contains those two types of programs. So PH contains PSH, permanent supportive housing, and RRH, or rapid rehousing. So
Okay.
PH is the umbrella.
Jocelyn has asked us to read the questions that are being asked. Yes, absolutely. Michelle has asked, so the fact that we are changing from transitional housing to rapid rehousing, we do not need to submit a letter of intent since we verbally confirmed with THN. That is correct.
So I think where I'm hearing a lot of confusion going on is the difference between a reallocation project and a new project. So if you've reallocated, you've already had that conversation with us here at THN, and we already know that you're going to be applying as a new project for your new component type. When we say new project for the purposes of this webinar, we're talking about someone who has never received CoC funding before and is applying for a truly new project to our CoC. So those projects that are truly applying as new agencies are the ones that are going to need to submit the letter of intent, not our reallocations, because you guys have already probably been in talks with us for a while about that as a possibility.
Correct, but any reallocation or renewal that does not intend to apply has to notify us by that same date. I hope that that is clear. Okay, so I'm going back to the top of page 7 and just want to again remind you all these handouts are available to you all in your little handouts window, but also all are on our website and have been posted. So dedication and prioritization and permanent supportive housing projects. New or renewal permanent supportive housing projects, again, and I know we're being repetitive, we just want to make sure this is crystal clear, must be 100% dedicated for chronically homeless persons, meaning they may only serve people who meet HUD's definition of the chronically homeless. These projects must also target persons with the highest needs and longest histories of homelessness. They must prioritize chronically homeless individuals, youth, and families who have the longest histories of homelessness and the highest need by implementing Notice CPD 1412. prioritizing persons experiencing chronic homelessness and permanent supportive housing and record-keeping requirements for documenting chronic homeless status. Projects that do not adopt this notice will be ineligible to apply for new or renewal permanent supportive housing projects. You'll find this notice in the appendix at the back of this RFP. Appendix B, says Caitlin. We have already adopted this in the Texas Balance of State CoC. I just want to say again, this is for new or renewal. So renewal projects, when you are working on your application, renewal PSH projects, your entire project now must be 100% dedicated. And just want to also encourage renewal and reallocations to please use your project review tools that you were provided with. Your score sheet from last year and the feedback and the task list we gave you will be incredibly helpful to you as you move forward in this application process. At this time, we don't have any reallocations planning to reallocate to coordinated entry SSOs, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. Threshold requirements, again, to become eligible for consideration by the Texas Balance of State CoC Independent Review Team, or IRT as we refer to it, project applicants must successfully first pass a review of threshold requirements. THN staff will perform this cursory threshold review. Applicants should not rely on THN for finding deficiencies. HUD may still choose to reject applicants rather than award funds with conditions. I can tell you all, these standards, not only is THN and the Texas Balance of State using HUD standards, we have significantly increased the minimum standards for projects to apply this year. Threshold is going to be extensive, much more so than it has in the past, so please review these minimum standards. And I just want to also point out, and Caitlin will get into this in depth a little bit more regarding the formatting, but as far as applications being submitted on time and any other corrections being received by the due date, we had projects last year that were not funded because they did not meet these deadlines. We posted this timeline when? The 21st? I'm throwing it out there. I'm close, but there's absolutely no reason that an application should be submitted late, and if it is, and again, we've got the policy on late submissions in Appendix C, it will most likely not be accepted. The process we will go through with the board is listed in Appendix C, but just again, I want you all to know we had more than one project last year that was not funded due to missing a deadline. I do not want to see that happen ever again in this balance of state or any continuum of care, really. Of all the reasons that a project is not accepted, let's let that never be another reason. So, and I just wanted to point out number 12 on the minimum standards. If there's evidence that a project applicant has been unwilling to accept technical assistance, has a history of inadequate financial accounting practices, that includes monitoring findings, has had indications of project mismanagement, including but not limited to monitoring findings, has a drastic reduction in the population served, has made program changes without prior HUD approval, or has lost a project site, the project application may be rejected from the Texas Balance of State CoC local competition. That's a big one. That's one you all need to be aware of. Also, and again, Caitlin will review this a little more thoroughly. I want to remind you all, we will be requesting recent monitoring findings from HUD. And I know of some recent monitorings that we still have yet to receive reports about, and just want to also take a moment here to remind you all that is in our policies that THN is notified, one, within 48 hours of HUD informing you you're going to be monitored, and that any communication with HUD on monitoring is forwarded to us within 48 hours. We will be verifying this with HUD CPD reps, so this information is crucial, and it will carry a heavier weight than it has in past competitions.
Cameron, we've got a pertinent question here from John Cooper. If a project lost a site due to non-renewal through the Tier 2 funding cuts, does that count as them having lost a site for the purposes of number 12 on threshold review?
No. John, that does not mean that you lost a project site. And I'm going to just pop up to Stanley's question. We have a question from Stanley Williams. If there's a larger number of areas that do not reallocate, will dollars be available for new rapid rehousing projects that will strengthen Texas's overall application to HUD? Yes, Stanley, as I said earlier, and that's one of the reasons we need to know projects' intentions, not only for new bonus project letters of intent, but any projects planning not to apply. Our priority is HMIS. Past HMIS, if we have projects that have to be reallocated, there may be additional funding available for new projects. It's just too soon for us to tell. Okay, I'm on page 9 under HMIS. Just want to remind, and this is, HMIS use is required for all renewal and reallocated projects. New project applicants, once awarded, if awarded, will obviously be required to use HMIS. Obviously, this does not apply to our victim service providers, but I want to make we've got some of our grantees that do not provide direct services. So for example, we have cities that are our primary grantees who have subcontractors that do their direct work. It is now a requirement that those cities have an HMIS license so that they're able to monitor compliance with HMIS, data quality, project performance, so that you can make data-driven decisions about your programs. So current CoC program grantees that are not direct service providers and that do not yet have an HMIS license will be required to obtain one on or before August 8, 2016. I would encourage you all to do that immediately, but this is the time we have given you, and your project will be notified if this applies to you. You all should know who you are. And just as far as victim service providers, so again, HMIS use is not required for victim service providers due to VAWA, but however, victim service providers receiving HUD funds must use for all project data a comparable database that complies with all current HUD HMIS data standards and technical standards. One example of that is Osnium. There are some others. This has been a requirement for almost 5 years. I'm still not entirely clear why some of our balance of state grantees are not using comparable systems, but this does put our CoC and your projects at risk with HUD. We want to get into compliance with this as soon as possible. We've discussed this with our DV providers at the Provider Connect workshops, at our project reviews, at reallocation calls if those occurred. So I just want to point this out as well. Any current grantee, any current victim service provider grantee that is not already meeting this requirement must submit a plan of action to be in compliance within 90 days of the RFP release. So that is November 6, 2016. So with your application materials, if you are not already meeting this requirement, you must submit a plan of action to be in compliance. And I can say it's going to make providing your APRs challenging for this competition. And we'll discuss that a little bit more. I'm just looking at questions here. Michelle, yes, I was referring to potential additional funding.
Here, let's also say the question. So Michelle wanted to know if there was reallocated, or if there was more funding available for reallocated projects. And now you can say your answer. Sorry, people can't see our questions.
Right. Not at this time. But as my answer to Stanley's question, depending on who does and does not choose to renew, there may be additional funding. And it will be up to our board to determine if some of that is available for reallocated projects or bonus projects. And again, that's a big may, and that's after we make sure we've got our HMIS project squared away. Danny Shaw. Does this mean you are going to charge cities for the license? Currently, the city of Denton has access and signed agreements but does not pay. Danny, we're just referring to CoC grantees that may be city entities. John Cooper, do we know if a date to submit the APR has been released? John Cooper, the date has not yet been released, so those of you still waiting to submit 2014 APRs are still waiting to submit 2014 APRs. And this won't apply in your particular situation, but that's one of the reasons we are unable to use eSNAP's APRs for this year's competition. Okay, moving on to eligible applicants. Obviously, you need to be located in the Texas Balance of State CoC. You can look at our list of counties in Appendix A of the RFP. You also need to make sure, again, we're going to go back to the interim rule, right? It goes through eligible project applicants in depth and the requirements. Application deadlines. Again, applications are due on August 8th, no later than 5 p.m. THN reserves the right to extend the deadline. I see right now no situation in which that will happen. And again, I just want to stress this. Applications received after the due date will not be reviewed or included in the 2016 consolidated application in accordance with the board's late submission policy found in Appendix C. And we are going to review our timeline. Again, we've had the timeline up for a little while. We may make one update to that today. We're definitely going to make one update to that today, and it's going to be in reference to Mary bringing up not to hit submit in eSNAPs. So we'll make that very clear. So just so you all know, anytime we update any of these documents on the website, we're going to make it very clear that we have done so, and we will also shoot an email out just so you all are aware that there has been a change made, and we'll let you know what that is. But I'm just going to briefly review the timeline. As I stated, on the 28th of June, the NOFA was released by HUD. And just also want to reiterate that the application, the eSNAPS applications, have not yet become available. We do have the links to where all of those will be. They're on the new project application and the renewal project evaluation. So as soon as those are functioning on HUD's website, you will already have the links to them, but that information has not yet been made available. HUD anticipates this will occur sometime after July 6th. Yeah, thanks HUD. So we are waiting, you know, kind of with bated breath to get the details of this application, because there are certain decisions we are waiting to make based on that. I think also, give me 1 second, y'all. Where did we put, to sign up on the HUD Exchange for updates? Okay, so, and Caitlin will review that, but if you all are not signed up for the HUD Exchange updates, we're gonna highly recommend you do that like as soon as this webinar is over. One, that is your direct line to HUD, right? So the second that everything becomes available, it will be available to you through that listserv. And not only that, as a grantee, of course all of our grantees are already signed up, but all of the information you need to know from HUD and the resources are going to be available through that exchange, and Caitlin will review that. On June 30th, Texas Balance of State CoC members and dishes was informed of the NOFA release. That's already been done. On the 8th, we posted our RFP and CoC grant materials. On the 11th, Caitlin sent out all of your LOCKS data. This is just for reallocations and renewal projects to be verified. That is due no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, the 15th. This is a very important date. So our renewals and reallocations sent all of their LOCKS data into us that's applicable to this competition. We've reviewed it. Caitlin has now sent it back to you for your approval. That has to happen by 5 o'clock on the 15th. We're sending it back to you all for one more review because this is what we're going to use in the competition for your LOCKS scoring. 7/12/16, mandatory webinar, that's where we are right now. On the 15th, again, those two due dates, letter of intent for new bonus projects due, again, not required for reallocations or renewals. Also on the 15th, any renewal or reallocation projects that are intending not to apply for funding must be submitted by Friday by 5 o'clock. If your organization chooses to not to compete at a later date in the competition process, your agency will be ineligible to apply for future CoC funding. Okay. Again, we're repeating ourselves, but this is important. LOCKS, and this is in addition to LOCKS data verification, competition APRs are due to the offices. Again, Friday's a big day. Friday the 15th by 5 o'clock to Caitlin. This is required for renewals and reallocations only. On the 8th, that is the big day. Applications are due to our office by 5 o'clock. Again, they must be submitted on time. Please review the policy. Please submit your applications on time. By August 18th, we should have our threshold review complete. We will be sending out corrections to applicants by 5 p.m. on that date with a quick turnaround for corrections being returned by August 22nd. By the 25th, we'll advise all projects by email if they've met HUD and Texas BoS CoC eligibility and whether or not they'll be submitted with the 2016 consolidated application. On the 25th, applications will be sent to our independent review team. The 7th, the independent review team will complete application reviews and scores, and then we will rank project applications. On the 9th, applications will be notified of their preliminary ranking results. Also on the 9th, the Texas BoS CoC board will review and vote on the reviews, scores, and ranking. On the 12th, the board will review the consolidated application. On the 12th, we will post the consolidated application, including the priority listing. And on the 14th, we will submit the whole shebang, the consolidated application to HUD. Again, I just want to point out that we are waiting for HUD's project applications to come out. And our applications, our detailed applications to come out. These have not been released. So we may have some revisions to this process based on what we see. We hope there aren't major revisions, but I just I want to keep throwing that disclaimer in there. We did not feel we had the time available to not go ahead and get started. So I'm on to page 12, technical assistance. And I'm just seeing about, so I've got a question from Cheryl Clay. Has the deadline for this year moved up? It seemed like it was a late September deadline before. Yes, it has moved up because the NOFA was released much, much later last year. John Cooper is asking, are new projects ranked in the priority listing? Yes, all projects will be ranked in the priority listing. Okay, Kim Redman has asked a question. Kim, you all are in a really unique position, and we will discuss that with you later. There's actually a small section of this RFP dedicated just to you, but we'll be in touch with you about your situation. Chad Wheeler, are there specific requirements that need to be included in the letter of intent? Chad, at this time our only requirements are component type and total budget. If you already have additional details that you can include, we would welcome those.
And Chad, I will say you can find those on page 3 of the RFP. It just says letter of intent to apply, shows you where to send it and when, and it just says proposed project type, total budget amount in the body of the letter. So that's on page 3, just for your future reference.
Availability of technical assistance. Sorry, Caitlin, I'm back on 12. So a limited amount of technical assistance will be available to project applicants. Applicants may seek clarification on program requirements and project eligibility. I'm just going to stress again, after you have read the HUD required trainings. Please read the HUD required trainings. We have limited time. Most of those answers are there for you. If you need clarification, if you want to discuss how that's going to impact your project, specifically, of course we are here to support you, but please, please, please read the recommended trainings that we've suggested. We also put in a lot of really good resources in our pre-competition checklists, which are still on our website. Again, we really have done the work for you all, going through, and John Cooper cracks me up, just said, now come on, won't you just do all of the work for us? If I had time, I would, John Cooper, but yeah, we just don't have time. So if you call us with a question and we know the answer was very clearly spelled out for you in one of those resources, we're going to refer you back to that initially and ask you to reread that and then contact us. I'll be sending out a doodle poll with TA times for project applicants to reserve times. We strongly encourage you all to reserve available times. Listen, y'all, if y'all need help, we're going to help you. But just keep in mind, this is a lot of work on our end, and we're also, in addition to dealing with the competition process for all of you with the reallocations, new projects, we do the COC-wide consolidated application. We also have to do a planning application and an HMIS application on top of those things. So again, we want to help you as much as possible. We want you all to be successful. We want our application to be successful, but please, please take the time to review the materials we have sent you, and not just in the RFP, but in the pre-competition checklist as well. Jenny Stafford has asked, for clarity's sake, will renewing PSH projects non-CH beds need to now be designated to chronically homeless? Jenny, yes, that is absolutely what we are saying. All PSH within the balance of state now has to be 100% dedicated to the chronically homeless. So I'm not going to review in depth the application packets because Caitlin is going to do that with you all. I am going to go ahead and go to page 15. For match, just so everybody knows, it's a 25% match requirement for all project budget components except leasing, and our leverage is 150% leverage, 1.5 to 1, must be documented. Any leverage above 150% will result in bonus points on scoring, but those are our, well, HUD and our requirements for match and leverage. I want to also point out on page 16, documenting match and leverage. Under number 4, it says generally no more than 60 days prior to the due date of the award announcement. And we need probably just to update that, but all of your attachments and letters, and this will be very clear in the evaluation and application, need to be dated between May 1st and August 8th, 2016. And if you go to page 17, under letters, just also want to point this out. Letters from prior years will not be used or accepted. If we receive a document that appears to have been tampered with, for example, whiteout and a new date handwritten in, y'all, no, absolutely not. Not gonna fly. And will result in delays for you and us. So please, all new letters, all with accurate, correct, updated dates between May 1st and August 8th. We've got several resources for you all on match and leverage over the next few pages. I just want to point out a few things on, I'm not going to go through all those, on Appendix A, page 21. Just on certifications of consistency. I hope when we sent out our pre-competition checklist, you all started looking at those and working on these things in mid-June, because it will make your lives much easier. Con-plan jurisdictions can be identified using the search function on the HUD Exchange. We have hyperlinked it here for you. For communities with multiple renewal projects, a con-plan for each jurisdiction listing all of those projects providing services can be submitted on behalf of all applying entities. That is up to you all. If you feel like you can work with other partners in your jurisdiction to get one letter, that's great. Speaking from experience, I tried to do that in the past when I was operating COC-funded projects, and I just decided to get my own. If your project is not located in an entitlement jurisdiction, the con plan will be provided by the state of Texas. We have listed Elizabeth Yevich's information from TDHCA in her email for you. Again, Appendix C, I referenced the policy on late submissions. We've got that laid out for you all. We have Housing First resources, as well as a link to our Housing First resource list on our website. Please review those. Again, please ensure that this is something your project can commit to. Appendix E, we have the list of 2016 renewal projects. You'll see Kim Spindletop is our only first-time renewal, and then we have a list of our reallocation projects. And Caitlin, I'm trying to see, where do we reference?
Reference what?
The first time. While Caitlin is searching, I'm going to look at some of these questions. What was the... Okay, Kim, we'll get back to you on that. It's in here somewhere, or it's in the renewal evaluation. And Mary's just pointed... Mary has just pointed out to me. That's fine. We'll find it later. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have taken us on the trail. Will you go to page 24 real quick, please, Caitlin? We've included a few key HUD CPD notices and regulations here. One is the prioritization notice we referred to about the chronically homeless and permanent supportive housing. The second is appropriate placement for transgender persons in single-sex emergency shelters and other facilities, and then equal access to housing in HUD programs regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, final rule. Just want to bring your attention to these. Again, we put them here for a reason. Please read them and make sure that your project is in compliance, or your new project will be. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Caitlin to start reviewing the new application and renewal project evaluation. And while we are switching over to her, I'm going to see if I can answer some more of y'all's questions. So Chad Wheeler is asking, is there flexibility between the budget listed in the letter of intent and the final project budget on the application? Yes. We're not going to hold you to that amount, Chad. You know, obviously we'd like it to be, you know, in the ballpark. It's just going to give us an idea of how many bonus projects we have applying for our amount of allocated funding. Adra Halford has asked, are there specific projects that you all know will not meet threshold requirements or qualifications? I don't want to put all the work into an application just to have it thrown out on threshold criteria. At this time, we don't know of any projects, but we really won't know until we go through threshold and review all of the HUD items and all of our items, Adra. And if we get to that point and see, you know, there's something concerning about a project, we will contact that project and let them know. Jocelyn Wybe, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your last name, it's a new name to me, has asked if we plan to use pending funding that has not been granted by the CoC grant application deadline as match and leverage. How do we document that since we may not have a commitment in place from the donor at that time? So there is guidance for that in the match and leverage section. Like if you don't, you know, if it's a grant you've applied for and haven't received, or it's an MOU that hasn't been completed yet, you can still write the letter and include the dates. You just need to make sure if that funding doesn't come through, you're going to have an alternate source of match. Naomi Reynolds has asked, is there a listing of project coordinators for cities and veterans organizations?
Oh, I guess I'll speak to that. This is Caitlin. I've been mainly working with our Veterans Initiative. I guess I'm not really sure what you mean by project coordinators, but what I do have is a list of SSVF providers, or supportive services for veteran families. It's a grant that does homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing for homeless veterans across our state, and I do have that list. So if that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and feel free to shoot me an email. I'm going to put my email address in the chat box where you can find it, and I am happy to get that list to you. And I will say that those SSVF providers are pretty well connected in their communities and might be able to direct you towards those folks that you're looking for, Naomi.
Alonzo Peterson has asked, how do we access our application from last year for a project? That's all in eSnaps. You should be able to access that in eSnaps. And Michelle, I'm assuming Michelle's asked what page is this slide. We've put up a new document and Caitlin's going to let you know what it is in just a moment.
All right, well, if we don't have any more questions for now, I'm hoping I'll see some more as we're going through these applications and stuff. Feel free to write in, and we're going to try and answer them as best we can, but we're going to go ahead and move on for now. So the document I'm about to go through with you guys is for our new projects, so those projects that have never received a CoC grant before, and for our reallocated projects. So for our projects that have received CoC funding maybe under a different component type, most likely transitional housing, and are now making the shift to either rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing. So this document just applies to those two groups of people. My other renewals, please hang on with me. There's also some great information in here for you. It will be repeated in your renewal application, so if you pay attention now, we can speed through the renewal application. The first thing that I wanted to show you guys is how to sign up, for the HUD Exchange mailing list. I cannot emphasize to you guys enough how important it is that you, as I'm doing this even, subscribe to this mailing list. If you want to do it while I'm doing it, I'll go nice and slow, so go ahead and open your web browsers, and I'll give you guys about 10 seconds to do that because I'm serious. Sign up for this. So I'm going to go ahead and count silently to 10 in my head, and I'll click on this link and we'll go through it together.
See, John, we do the work for you sometimes.
Or at least alongside you. All right, so I'm assuming everyone has a web browser up unless someone has an extremely slow internet like we sometimes do here. Go ahead and click on this link with me. If it asks you to switch apps, go ahead and say OK. And it should bring you to this beautiful HUD Exchange site, and you're going to click the subscribe button. So go ahead and click on that. It's going to bring you to this form. It's a pretty easy form, pretty standard. Go ahead and put in your email address, so whichever email address you want HUD to be emailing you. Your organization type, this should be a drop-down menu. Oh, it is on mine because it already knows what I am. But go ahead and type in your organization name there, and whether or not you're, a CoC grantee or something like that. So if I were, let's say, I'm trying to think, if I were the Gulf Coast Center, I would type in Gulf Coast Center CoC grantee, just like that. So they know who you are and what kind of funding you get. Go ahead and put in the zip code of the organization. I'm sorry, Jason, I don't know what Gulf Coast Center's zip code is off the top of my head, but I'm not going to subscribe you to this anyway. And then you're going to see a bunch of different options. I'd like to receive email updates about. You obviously want to click the CoC program. This is going to give you access to all those really fun, thanks Jason. I'm not going to sign you up because I assume you may already be signed up and I don't want you to get double done. I also don't want people to have your email address if you don't want them to. So we have the Continuum of Care program that's going to give you access to the NOFA, any updates to eSnaps, whenever new application materials become available. They do these really great educational pieces called Snaps in Focus. They're like 5-paragraph long educational pieces. If you're wondering why all of us at THN are so informed constantly, reading those is why, or at least a part of why. We are so well informed. For those of you who are double grantees with the Emergency Solutions Grant, go ahead and click that box as well. If you're maybe interested in receiving ESG or Emergency Solutions Grant in the future, go ahead and click that box and you'll get all the really fun updates for that as well. HMIS is another one I would suggest subscribing to. I'm sorry? An environmental review. Oh, I skipped right over that. Environmental review is something I would also subscribe to. What else is on here that would be good? Literally anything else that you want to subscribe to, please, be very well informed. I'm personally subscribed to the HOPWA list because I used to be a HOPWA provider, and that's still something I just like to keep tabs on. I would not, well, Cameron, should they do continuum of care point of contact, or no, is that just us? No. Okay, so don't click either one of these boxes because you guys are not software vendors, and THN is your continuum of care point of contact. The reason why you shouldn't click that box is because it'll sometimes ask you to do things that only your COC lead needs to do, and I don't want you guys to get confused and panicked that you have to turn something in that you don't have to turn in. That's our responsibility. And then you can click which preferred format you want to be in. I personally prefer HTML because it'll take you to the pretty site. But if you just want an email that's sent to you plain text, it's probably going to be Courier New or something. If you find that to be easier to read, go ahead and click that and then click subscribe to lists, and you've already accomplished the first task on your new project application. Wasn't hard. All right. The next thing that we suggest that you guys read is the FY 2016 COC Program Competition Notice of Funding Availability. This is what you hear us refer to as the NOFA, or Notification of Funding Availability. It's really important that you guys read through this so that way you know what HUD's policy priorities are this year and how we as a COC are being scored. So under those policy priorities in particular, it's about 2/3 of the way through the NOFA, you guys will start to understand a little bit more about all the things that we're asking you to do. So if we're asking you to prioritize veterans, you could then see, oh, we're getting a lot of points if we prioritize veterans, which will put our COC in line in front of other COCs to receive funding and to receive funding sooner. So you'll get contacted for your contract sooner, the more that we can be in line with HUD's policy priorities. If you want to know where all these things are coming from that we're asking you to do, it's all right here. The next section I want to go through with you guys is something that Cameron mentioned, and that is that HUD produces some really great resources to help you guys complete your application and your applicant profile. Now at this time, HUD has not yet released them because eSNAPS is not yet open. But what these guides will do is help walk you through eSNAPS step by step. It's got a lot of really great screenshots on it to guide you through exactly how to complete each part of your application, so both your applicant profile and your project application. They've released one for applicant profile, which I'll take you through now. I won't take you all the way through it, but I'll kind of show you what it looks like. So this is for your project applicant profile, and renewals, this is for you too. So if you need instructions on how to go through eSNAPS, if eSNAPS is not a platform you're super comfortable on, never fear. The applicant profile instructional guide is here. Yes, Mary. Yes, that's a good point. So Mary says that you must complete your project applicant profile before you can even access your application. And true, the application is not open yet, but you want to be ready when it does become available. So start working on this like this week. So that way if the project application comes out next week, you will already be ready to do it. So it's got a really helpful table of contents here that has guides for accessing eSNAPS. If you're already a user, if you're trying to access eSNAPS as a new user for our truly new folks. And then it has each form that it will guide you through on eSNAPS, and it'll show you exactly how to fill it out with some really helpful screenshots. So this is exactly what eSNAPS looks like. It'll have these little bubbles to tell you what to do. So it'll tell you log in here. If you're new to eSNAPS, create a profile here. It takes you step by step through exactly what you need to do. and it has very, very helpful screenshots. So this is why in years past, some of our renewals will remember that Eric used to do eSnaps tutorials. We're not going to be doing that this year because they have these really great guides that will take you through it better than we ever can, and it has the added benefit of you being able to print it out and be able to reference it even after, you know, a potential webinar would be over. So that way you guys always have this if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're working on your project applicant profile, and, you know, hopefully Cameron's asleep, and then you can't call her. This will always be here for you. All right. So it's basically more of the same for the rest of it, so I'm not going to bore you with looking through all of it, but I did want to introduce you to what that might look like. So they have two types of guides. They have instructional guides, which are those step-by-step pictures that take you through eSnaps, and there's also something called the detailed instructions. That's up here above. They're not yet available, but what detailed instructions will tell you is for each question, what do they mean? So sometimes questions can be a little misleading. You might get confused about the language that they use, and if so, a little question mark appears above your head as you're looking through the application, go ahead and look at the detailed instructions before you give us a call. Of course, we're happy to help, you know, translate anything, but go ahead and look at this before you give us a call to see if it provides any clarity for you. They do a really great job of trying to put things in plain language in the detailed instructions to let you know exactly what data point that they're looking for, or if it's a narrative question, what elements need to be included in that narrative question in order for you to score full points on it. So go ahead and look through it. If you still can't figure it out after that, of course, feel free to contact us, but go ahead and look at the detailed instructions first. There's also an instructional guide for performance measures, which is something new for everyone, both renewal, reallocated, and new folks. This is, you know, new folks, you're not going to be alone in the boat of being new to performance measures. They have instructional guides for that. You'll need it to complete Part 6 of your application. And then, especially for our new folks, this budget instructional guide is going to be especially helpful, and that will be for Part 7 of your application. So give both of those a look once they come out. Again, if I click one of these links, I'll show you what happens. It will take you to HUD Exchange, and it'll say it's not yet available. But if you sign up for that HUD mailing list that we just did together, HUD will email you when it becomes available, and you can look at it just as soon as they send you that link. And those links in the new application should stay the same. So regardless of whether or not that link is available, you will always have the path to get back to that landing page I just showed you. So next we're going to go through reallocations just very quickly. Reallocation funds may go to any of the following 4 projects, so new PSH, new rapid rehousing, new supportive services only, or new HMIS. Again, HMIS can only be applied for by THN because we have been designated by you all as the HMIS lead. You can also, if you're a truly new project, or even if you have received CoC funding before and you want to try a new permanent housing bonus projects, you may do so through the funding that they've set aside for the bonus, and you may only apply for new PSH that will serve 100% chronically homeless individuals and families, and new rapid rehousing projects that will serve literally homeless folks and folks that are meeting paragraph 4 of the definition of homeless. And you can submit more than one application for a new project. So, you know, go crazy. It's a lot of work. But if you think you can handle it, go for it. Let's see. For our reallocated projects who have received THN, or not THN funding, I'm sorry, CoC program before, then it will be really helpful for you to go back through those project review materials that we went through on your individual call. So look at your score sheet that we sent you guys. Look at that project review tool. Was there anything that was inconsistent last year? Did you have a missed opportunity that you want to follow up on, like your project description or your priority population? Was there anything that needed to be fixed? So you guys will have the additional bonus of having THN eyes on your application before and knowing some areas that need correction. So please look at those materials with a critical eye, and make sure that whatever you want to get corrected gets corrected in this upcoming competition. If you are a new project and you want to see what the score sheet looked like last year, you can still do so by clicking on this link. It will take you to the THN website, and you want to look under Texas Balance of States CoC grant materials. This is going to be everyone's hotspot for where to go for 2016 application materials, but we also have some old stuff here that you guys can use for reference. So the first heading is 2016 Texas Balance of States CoC competition. This is everything you need for this year's competition. And then underneath it, you'll see useful materials for 2015 Texas Balance of States CoC grant application. So this is for 2015. So you can go back and see what applicant profile forms there were, leverage for CoC project sample, our LOCKS reporting form. I'm trying to see, where do we post that score sheet at, Mary? I know it's it's under renewal project evaluation. So if you're a new project and you want to see the old score sheet, look under renewal project evaluation. That's right here. Oop, and I gotta move this little thing so I can access that. There it is. And you're gonna scroll through it all the way to the bottom. There it is. And it will let you know not only what we looked at as far as your data point, but what the standard was and how many points you could get for it. I will say that the score sheet for this year has been altered, but this is still a decent guide for you, just to know what kind of areas that we look at about what the standards are going to be. Some of these numbers have gone up, some of them have gone down, but they haven't gone down or up crazy amounts. So this is still, a good guide. But I wouldn't, rely on it to look exactly the same for this year. All right, so there's some helpful materials. So the next section is about your application. I'm going to go ahead and say it again, even though I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing it. Your applications are due by 5 p.m. on August 8th. And I cannot emphasize to you enough how much we are going to be sticklers about this. Please do not miss your application deadlines. We don't want to subject you guys to the late submission policy. Like Cameron said, we had some people who definitely lost their funding because they'd submitted late. Don't let that be you. We don't want to lose you guys. Y'all are all wonderful grantees. We enjoy working with you guys. We don't want to have to disqualify you just because you submitted something an hour late. So please don't let that be you. Also, all attachments, so any letters that you get signed, your certificate of consistency, anything that you attach to your applicant profile must be dated between May 1st and August 8th. Like Cameron said, please don't reuse old materials. We can tell. So don't be sneaky about it. Just get a new letter. All right, so the following section applies to reallocations only. So new applicants, just kind of plug your ears and hum for a second. So reallocations, we need your APRs. Those are due to me on the 15th. Yes, I did ask for a different reporting range than your grant year or your agency's fiscal year, and this is because eSNAPS is closed and we can't get your proper APRs. So we're asking everyone to run it out of HMIS, or if you are a DB provider, out of your comparable database, like Osmium or whatever else you're using, for this particular date range. So we want it from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2016. So we know that this is not the same as many of your grant years, and it's not the same as your agency's fiscal years either. Cameron.
So I just wanted to also let y'all know that many COCs have started using the systems where they're looking at the exact same time frame for each applicant, and it is not a grant year for any applicant. And there are reasons. They feel like this is a much fairer way to review project performance. Unfortunately, that wasn't the reason we made this decision. We made it because HUD, we didn't want to use old APRs for this competition. And had we not chosen to do things this way, we would have been looking at your APR from last year, and many of you wouldn't want that, and we don't want to do that. We want to look at the most recent data from your project. So this way, this is, we're ending as of the end of last month, so that all the work we've been doing with you all the past several months hopefully will reflect in this new data, this new project data. We sent out these date ranges in our pre-competition checklist. Those were sent out on June 21st, I believe. For those of you that use HMIS, you received a report from the HMIS staff. You were asked to complete any corrections by yesterday. And for DV providers, again, we've encouraged you all to run and review those beginning in June. So we're hoping this isn't going to cause a lot of undue stress. We really do feel it is the fairest way for us to review project and data and performance for this competition.
So we have a concern about that.
I realized I turned my mic off. So we have a concern about that from Woman Inc. So it says since that reporting period, July 1st through June 30th, is not necessarily an operating year for an agency, could they be penalized because it's not a complete operating year? What do you think about that, Cameron?
I mean, we don't have any, we only had one new project as of last year, and they have no data because their grant hasn't been executed. So I mean, your project doesn't stop at the end of your operating year. We're just looking at a year's worth of data. So it shouldn't make any difference at all.
We don't have any metrics in this year's score sheet, I believe, that say as of the end of the operating year. It's all going to be based off of that relative time period of July 1st through June 30th. So that should not be an issue for the metrics that we're using this year. So I guess I should also shout that out to everyone who's looking at last year's score sheet. Some of the metrics you'll see will say at the end of the project's operating year. That is no longer a metric we're going to be using because we are using this relative time period, and we wouldn't want someone to be penalized or unfairly advantaged because they were farther into their operating year. So if that's where that question is coming from, Michelle, we've eliminated that in this year's score sheet, so not to worry. So the next thing that we'll need from just our reallocations are your most recent HUD audit/monitoring results. It should be noted that we do have a policy on this, and you're supposed to let us know, I believe, within 48 hours if you are being monitored, and you're also supposed to CC us on any correspondence that you have with HUD. If you haven't done that, go ahead and just scan everything you have and send it to me. My address is in the chat box currently. For those of you who, for whatever reason, can't see it, it's Caitlin@thn.org. Caitlin is spelled C-A-I-T-L-I-N. So make sure you send that our way so you guys can be in compliance with that policy. If you were not monitored within the last year, please put a letter on your agency's letterhead just saying that for the 15-16 period, we were not monitored, just so we have documentation that you guys have not been monitored. We have something to put in your file. We've got a question about APRs. Carol, okay, never mind. I will not answer that. Cameron will answer that. And then for our renewals, we're also asking for your locks data. This is something that I have already sent out a request for on the I believe it was the 11th. It's due on the 15th. My inbox is full of y'all's questions and concerns about this. If I haven't gotten back to you yet, I am planning to do so this afternoon. So please just hang on. I will get to you. I have 8 voicemails I have not checked yet. I will get to you. I promise I will get to you. I apologize for not having done so yet, but don't sweat it. We'll make sure that we get it all resolved. So I've made a little checklist for our renewal applicants here, so that way you can print this out, keep it by your desk to make sure that you have everything you need to have what's considered a complete application packet. So this is everything that we'll need from you. Everything we're asking for is in this checklist. So make sure that you've got all of these application packet items in a single email, with the exception of APR and verified locks data. So this applies to everyone. So renewals, new, and reallocation, please listen up. We would like everything that has a number in front of it to be in one email. So last year we had people who would send their certification of consistency in one email, and then monitoring and project application in another email, and then applicant profile in another email. This is how stuff gets lost, and we don't want to get you guys having to send stuff over and over and over again because it got lost in the bottom of somebody's inbox, please just send one email with everything attached. I will also note that this year we have some very specific file naming conventions. File naming conventions means that when you save the file and it says save as and you have the choice to name your file, you must name it this. So where you see applicant name, you're going to put your applicant name. So I'm sorry to pick on Gulf Coast Center here. But if I were Gulf Coast Center, I would put Gulf Coast Center in here. And then for project name, I would put, PSH for disabled adults, because that's what their project is called. I also included an example over here in case no one's listening to me right now. So if your applicant name was Texas Agency and your project name was Texas House, this is what it would look like. So you would use APR 2016 HMIS, which is the same as over here. Where it says applicant name, you would put Texas Agency, and where it says project name, you would put Texas House. So imagine in this case, Gulf Coast Center is your applicant, and Permanent Housing for Disabled Adults is Texas House. And it would be much the same. So please make sure that you use these because this is going to help me not lose your project data and have to ask you for it like 4 times, which I know takes up a lot of your time and is irritating for you to have to constantly answer my emails. So if you do it right the first time, I will leave you alone. So one email, all of the files that have a number in front of them should be included. Make sure you do include that number in the name of your file. Last thing, please make sure when you send me these that you export what is called a searchable PDF. Now, I know no one knows what that means, but I will explain it to you now. A searchable PDF means that when I highlight text, it actually gets highlighted. What's called an unsearchable PDF is when you take the document I'm asking for, so like the project application, you print it, you rescan it, you save that as a PDF, and then I can't highlight the text like this, which means whenever I send it to the independent review team when they're trying to find a data point, they can't just easily do this Control F thing and search for it. So if I'm looking for the applicant profile, I could just type in applicant profile down here at the bottom, and it would show me where it is. If I can't search your text, I can't do that, and it takes me 3 hours to score your project application instead of 45 minutes. I cannot stress to you enough how much I need you guys to do this. It's also very easy to do. So if you're in eSnaps, there is a button at the end of each of these documents that says Export to PDF. It's very clearly labeled. Click Export to PDF, and then don't print it, just send me that PDF. So it's pretty easy. There's a very clearly labeled button, and you just click Export. And that will apply for those 2 that are coming out of eSnaps, which is applicant profile and your project application. I will say your HUD monitoring letter, go ahead and scan that. That's fine. Match and leverage documentation, go ahead and scan that. That's fine. Certification of consistency, you may scan that. That's okay. Your letter of participation, also fine to scan. Housing First narrative, I guess I'd prefer if we could search it, but that would be okay to scan. The things that are really important, that they are exported PDFs from eSnaps, are your applicant profile and your project application. If you get confused when it comes time to submit that, about where those buttons are, please call me. I would so much rather have your searchable PDF than have something that is going to take our independent review team a really long time to go through. Yeah, we also aren't going to consider it a complete application, and so if you do it at 5 o'clock and it's an unsearchable PDF, you've missed the boat. We did not have a complete application on time. So I cannot stress to you enough how important this is. And if you get confused about it, please call me. I'm a reasonable person. I can help walk you through it. But please, 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 please do this for me, guys. Every time I get an unsearchable PDF, I start crying in my office. Not really, but you get the point. So we have the deadline here again, August 8th. If you need guidance on completing the applicant profile, I've reproduced that link right there that'll take you to the project applicant profile instructional guide. It will walk you through eSnaps and show you how to do everything you need to know how to do. Now to new projects, this is essentially the same as the graph I showed you above, with the exception of the fact that you guys do not have to turn in an APR or locks by the 15th. Lucky you. And the rest of it, I believe, is the same. So this is just all the files that you need to attach to that single email that you sent me. So it's your applicant profile out of eSnaps, your project application out of eSnaps. If you had received HUD monitoring findings because you have a different HUD grant, you can submit those. If not, just say that, we're a new project, we've never been monitored before, put it on your agency's letterhead. That's fine. Ooh, good point, Mary. So while you guys have been sending all documents to me for your APR and for your locks, keep doing that. Keep sending that to Caitlin at thn.org. To submit your actual application packet with all these nicely numbered and named files, please send it to this email address, which is Texas Balance Estate COC at thn.org. That's for new, that's for renewal, that's for reallocation. So no matter who you are, make sure you submit your application packet, which this list of documents is what we're referring to as application packet. Please send that here to Texas BoS CoC at thn.org. Now for new applicants, we also have a really fun tool that you can use that will help you get a leg up on starting your application. So this is some of the information that will be asked for in the new 2016 application. Now we've based this on last year's project application for new projects, and so it's possible that when the 2016 application comes out, they're going to ask you for some information that isn't on this application tool, and that's just because they haven't released the eSnaps application yet, so we were unable to update this with the most recent stuff. But this will give you a leg up on starting to collect all that information. I'd like to point out this is only a tool. If you submit this tool to us as your item 2, as your project application, that is wrong. Please send us your eSnaps one. We cannot accept this application tool as your actual application. This is just to help you start collecting that information that you will need to fill out the application when it becomes available in eSnaps. So if you want to get a leg up on starting to collect the information, on seeing what HUD is going to ask you for, this is a great tool to do that. Renewals and reallocations, you're also welcome to look at this for the same purpose. But you also have your prior year's application in eSnaps, which should already have all this information in it. So you have the added benefit of already having this filled out. All right, and I believe that is it for the new project application. So we're going to go ahead and jump over to renewal. So renewals, this is what your project evaluation will be like. You're not having to fill out an application for the first time, so we're instead providing you with some guidance about how we're going to be evaluating your project. So we have an introduction here. Again, we've mentioned the links for renewal project applications and eSnaps are not yet available. We don't know when they'll become available because HUD said sometime after July 6th. It's sometime after July 6th. They still haven't come out yet. HUD is not being very specific on when it will be released. However, if you signed up for that mailing list that I just went through with you guys, it will automatically be sent to your inbox and you can have access to it immediately. In lieu of that, you can also just use this link list and you can continue clicking on them until it just shows up. Unlike in the new and reallocation links, these are specific to renewal projects, so make sure that you use these instead of the ones on the prior guide, with the exception of applicant profile instructional guide, which is the same for new, renewal, and reallocations. So that's actually the same link there. But we also include the performance measures and the budget because that's actually new to everybody this year. So if you're wondering what your project application is going to be evaluated on, you can see those target scoring areas here. So we look at how well you impact your participants as far as their housing stability, their access to income and benefits, their length of time homeless. We look at how well you're meeting a community need using these 2 data points, what your project's capacity is, how well you engage with the CoC, so attending RPG meetings and all those webinars that we keep telling you are mandatory. We do track that, and that does impact your scoring. We also look at your use of housing first practices. We are going to be looking much closer at your project descriptions, so if you heard me pick on your project description in your project review call, that's because we're going to be looking at it a lot more closely this year. This is where I think I told you guys we would be providing more guidance. This is where the guidance is. So in your project description, we want to see that it is complete and concise. It has to address the entire scope of your project, including a clear picture of the community or target population that you're going to serve. The plan for addressing the identified needs and issues of the CoC or your community, and projected outcomes and any coordination with other partners that you do. So I've also put those in some bullet points here that are very easy to read and digest. Please make sure your project description addresses all of these things. That might mean that it's much longer than last year's, but there's also more space this year. So, use it. We would like to be able to get a clear picture about what your agency looks like and what your housing project looks like and what partners you have just by looking at your project application. We will be looking at this much more closely this year. I also put a section in about data sources. So this is the data sources that we're using to score your application. Just to make that crystal clear to you guys, we are using your APRs, we are using your LOCKSS data, we are using any information that you submitted in the housing inventory count, which is called the HIC, or at least we call it the HIC here, or the point in time count, or the PIT data submission. We also use information about your HUD audit monitoring findings and information on your match and leverage. So those are all the data sources that we're looking at to score your application. Oh, here's the Spindletop Center clause that we were talking about before. So Spindletop, this is a shout out just to you because you guys did receive renewal, or you guys are a first-time renewal who have not received your grant yet, unfortunately. This is how we're going to be looking at you guys because you don't have any prior year data for us to score you on. So read that when you can, Spindletop folks. If you have questions about it, of course, please call Cameron or myself or Mary. Probably Cameron would be the best person to talk to about it. All right, and then the following is the same as reallocation on the new project application we went through. We're looking for your APR for this specific date range. Yes, we want it out of HMIS instead of in eSNAPS. eSNAPS is currently closed. We do want to see your most recent HUD monitoring findings. If you haven't been monitored, please write us a letter stating so on agency letterhead. Your LOCKSS data, of course, is due to me on Friday. I will get to your questions. I promise I will get to your questions. So feel free to be annoying about it, and I will get back to you. Something new this year is Housing First narrative. So in Appendix D of the RFP, there's some detailed instructions about what we want in the Housing First narrative, but this is new. So it's going to be an up to 2-page narrative on either how you are complying with a Housing First approach, or if you're not yet, but you have a plan of action to do so by the time your grant will be in place, go ahead and let us know what that is and let us know what you're going to change in your policies and procedures, in your community rules, in your intake packet. All of the details for that are located in Appendix D of the RFP. So the specific elements that you have to include will be in the RFP. So go ahead and flip over there when you get a chance. This is just reminding you to please send me all of your LOCKSS and APR by this Friday at 5 p.m. I think I saw in the questions, yes, that is 5 p.m. Texas time, Central Standard Time. Or are we in daylight time? We're in standard time. Yes. Uh-oh. Well, I can change that. And then the application packets are due on the 8th to this website. Please don't send them to me, even though I will probably be the one that looks at them. We want them to all be in this inbox here. So Texas or TX, BOS CoC @thn.org. And then we also have a checklist for you guys. So your completed applicant profile as an export from eSNAPS. Please do not print and scan it because I will start crying. Also, project application, export PDF from eSNAPS, your HUD monitoring letter, your match and leverage documentation. These two can be scanned. Your certification of consistency may be scanned. Something new we're also asking for this year is documentation of homeless or formerly homeless persons' participation in either your board of directors or other equivalent policymaking entity. You don't have to identify that individual by name, especially that individual does not wish to be identified, but you must have a letter stating that there is someone in a decision-making role at your agency who has either currently or has formerly experienced homelessness. The reason why we put this on here is because that was a very common monitoring finding in prior years for our grantees, and we want to make sure that we are supporting you and doing well in your monitorings. That will inevitably happen by making sure that you guys already have this on file, so when HUD asks for it, you've already got it. And we can back you up because we've got a copy of it too. And then the Housing First narrative is also new this year. And again, project applicant profile instructional guide is there for you already. The actual application guides will be there for you soon. Again, sign up to that HUD exchange list and they will tell you when it's ready. All right, and I think that concludes those two. What is next? I'm next. Let's see. So next on our agenda here is common errors from 2016. Do you want me to go?
Yep. Do we have a new project score sheet on the site from last year?
You want to mention that, Cameron?
Yeah, Julia, we had a question for project evaluation for newer reallocated projects. Will the score sheet be similar? I believe that's the question you're asking, Julia. So new and reallocated projects have the application. As far as the scoring guide, which I think is what you're referencing, last year there was never a new project score guide posted on the website. We will go ahead and add that today. Again, as you all know, I think we've been pretty repetitive about this. We have not finalized our scoring or ranking for this year. This year because we're waiting on HUD, but we'll get that up on the website. And I think we're also going to be updating the evaluation and application today. We just want to make sure it's very, very clear that y'all are not submitting in eSnaps until you get the word from us. So we're going to make that change as well.
Again, we will try to make that very clear as we make updates, which one is the most recent one, so not to worry there. Something else that I neglected to mention was about your applicant profile. There are a series of forms that must be attached to your applicant profile. That series of forms can be found on the pre-application checklists, which I believe we have up here, these two pre-competition checklists. Now, it has been pointed out to us that a couple of those forms are outdated. However, they are the most recent forms that we can find, and HUD has not released more updated ones even though those forms say they have expired. If new ones become available, we will let you know and we will give you the links to those forms. In the meantime, go ahead and fill out the expired ones because hopefully it'll be more or less the same information, so you'll already have that information in one place. Go ahead and upload the expired ones at this point because HUD has not released anything newer for you to use. So you can put some stock in that. We have told you to do that, so if they yell at you, blame us. And we will make sure that you have the most recent forms if they do become available. I keep looking for those every week, and they have not come out yet. So go ahead and use the ones that you find here. If you are a renewal or a reallocation, go ahead and use a 2016 renewal pre-competition checklist. And if you are new, looking at you, Carpenter's Church, 2016 new project pre-competition prep checklist. I don't know why it says final on the end, but it is the final one. This is what they look like. Renewals, yours will look very similar. If you go all the way to, oh, where did it go? Oh, here it is, to a project application, it'll tell you which forms you need. So the disclosure of lobbying form, even if you don't lobby, go ahead and print it out and sign it and just write in big letters, my agency does not lobby. So if you're Gulf Coast Center, put Gulf Coast Center does not lobby across the front, just sign it for us. It's we still have to have the attachment even if you guys don't lobby. There's also HUD Form 570, Drug-Free Workplace Certification. So that form can be found under this link. Your agency's code of conduct, if it is not already on file with HUD, then you need to upload it here. Some of you will already have it uploaded, and I believe the link to check is located in the renewal and the new forms that I just went over with you. So it should be right here. It says codes of conduct on file with HUD as of June 13th are located here. So you can see if your agency already has it on file. If not, go ahead and attach it to your applicant profile. And that is in both the renewal and the new documents that I went over with you guys, so you both have the link. You'll also need to complete a faith-based EEO survey, the SF 424 supplement. This is the one that is most severely outdated. HUD hasn't provided us with anything new, so go ahead and use that one until you get further notice from us. And everything else that you need to attach as attached to your applicant profile should be stuff like your nonprofit documentation, which you guys should already have. So it'll give you a list in the project, in the applicant profile. It will tell you which forms you need to collect and upload. But those are the ones where you will need to find the form online. But we've included in that application checklist for you. All right, I know everyone's getting really bored of the sound of my voice, so I'm going to try and zoom through the common project application issues from last year just as quickly as I can. Of course, I hope not to sacrifice thoroughness about that. So the first area was submission format. We got people that sent a bunch of different items. Let me open the agenda real fast. Here we go. So we had people that send their application packet items in a variety of different emails. It was very hard to keep track of. I know some of you got asked to send things more than once, and that's because those emails may have gotten misplaced or lost or filed in a weird area that one of our applicant or one of our IRT members thought was a good place to put it and another one couldn't find. So if you include it all in one email, that will really help us streamline the process and be able to get you your scores faster. Additionally, it really helps us if your applicant profile and your project application are in that searchable PDF format, meaning that you didn't print and scan it in where it's a picture, but it's actually a document where I'm able to highlight the text. We also had a lot of trouble with the disclosure of lobbying form last year, and I know a lot of you guys, in fact most of you guys probably don't lobby. We do still need that form, just put across the top, my agency does not lobby. So like it would say Spindletop Center does not lobby, or Salvation Army Corpus Christi does not lobby across the top. I don't think any of you lobby, to my knowledge, but go ahead and turn in the form anyway. I know it's annoying. We also need your HUD monitoring letters. If you have been monitored, we need the final letter from HUD that says all of your monitoring findings has been closed, in addition to the first letter that they send you that says you're going to be monitored, their monitoring report. If you had to make any corrections or had to submit a plan of action, or if you told them how you fixed it, we need your letter in response, and then we need the letter back from HUD saying that everything is satisfactorily resolved.
If you have been monitored and you do not have your final report yet, we need, and we should actually already have on file, the notice HUD sent you about the monitoring. Then we need a letter on letterhead stating you've not received your final or initial report yet, but you should still have had a debrief from HUD, and they should have told you what concerns and findings are going to be listed on your report. So basically, any information you have, we need. We will be confirming this with CPD reps, so please save us time and provide us with all of this information. If you haven't been monitored this year, it's easy. You know, you just send us a letter indicating that. If for some reason you have outstanding findings from a former year's monitoring, we absolutely need that, and we'll probably need to discuss that with your project. Caitlin, I just want to, I don't know if you all are reading the questions in the chat box.
Oh, I have not been.
Well, there have been a couple of good ones. I'm responding to them. There's one I just wanted to read out. Jocelyn asked when you were talking about the applicant profile forms, if they needed to be downloaded and signed then scanned, or do they also need to be searchable PDFs? And the response was, one, good question. So those are all part of the applicant profile in eSnaps, so when you export that PDF, they'll all be included. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that.
Yeah, so I will say this. This can be a little bit confusing when I'm harping on about this, is it's just your applicant profile and your project application that we need to be in a searchable PDF format. You can scan away everything else, just make sure that they're still in separate files with those file naming conventions that we saw before. Jocelyn, if you need to scan in your nonprofit documentation to attach to your applicant profile, totally fine. I don't think there's a way we could get that in searchable PDF anyway, especially if it's an older letter that came from pre-computer days. So that's fine. All right. Is there any other questions I need to address? Oh, Cameron, you've been very busy answering all these questions. Thank you. I've not been looking at them. Okay. So I'm going to continue on with the common application errors from last year. Again, for HUD monitoring letters, we do need that final letter from HUD saying that everything has been satisfactorily resolved. I think that was the biggest error that we saw, is we had a letter from HUD stating, we're going to come monitor you. We had your agency's response saying, we received your monitoring letter, this is what we've done to fix it, but we never got that last letter saying that HUD got your letter and that it was satisfactory to them. So make sure you do include that this year. We also had a real issue with data consistency in APRs, so please make sure that your bed count is accurately reflected in this year's APR. Actually, is that collected in the HMIS APR? It is? Okay, so make sure that your bed count is accurate this year. Make sure you actually do go through your APR and make sure that everything kind of feels right. So do that gut check that we were talking about in your project applications to make sure that as you're looking at your data, that everything sort of feels right. You're like, yeah, we about enter, 50% of people into SNAP benefits. Oh yeah, we exit about 80% of people. That feels right to me. So make sure that if, you think that most of your people exit to permanent housing and you look at your APR and it says 20% of your people are exiting to permanent housing, that you address that before you submit your APR to us. Also, we had some issues with Housing First consistency and answers. So in your project application, it would say we totally comply with the Housing First approach, and then later in your application, we would see that your participants would have to have income before they entered, or that your participants could be exited for not complying with services. So that was a little bit of a discrepancy. We're hoping to see more consistency there this year. So make sure that you really understand what a Housing First approach is and that you are in fact following that, and then further that that is reflected correctly in your application.
Yeah, and just so you all are aware, we are going to be looking at fidelity to the model. So yes, for purposes of application, we need to see certain boxes checked. However, this is not about boxes being checked. This is about your program design and how you are working with program participants. So we're going to be working with you all a lot moving forward on fidelity to this model. And again, we have some really great resources on the website. Please use them.
And lastly, I wanted to talk to you guys. Oh, I guess it's not lastly. I have one more sheet of notes. But one of the last things I wanted to talk with you all about was target population. We had some very diverse answers in target population. We had a lot of people that checked all of the boxes. Selecting a target population is not indicating to HUD that you are willing to accept people that are from those target populations. So for instance, people who are under the age of 25, veterans, chronically homeless, survivors of domestic violence. If your program is open to serving all of those people, that's fine, that's great, but that does not make them your target population. So for instance, if I was a HIV service provider, I don't necessarily need to check every single box because my program is open to all of those people. I would want to check the HIV AIDS box because that is my target population. That is who my agency primarily serves and who I'm primarily accepting into the program. Cameron, is that the right way to explain that?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some cases there will be more than one box checked. We just want to make sure that you're checking the accurate boxes that describe your project and your target population. And we are going to be doing a much more thorough review of applications this year than I think maybe has ever happened here. Yes, nods around the room. So we're going to be looking at this stuff very closely, and obviously you'll have opportunities if we have questions to correct those, but ideally we want you all reviewing these very thoroughly. And again, I know we're being repetitive, but for those of you that are renewals or reallocations, we would have discussed this with you at your project review. So please use those resources.
Excellent. Okay, just a couple more things. Like I mentioned before, we are going to be looking more closely at your project description. We did provide specific guidance in that renewal evaluation document that I just went through with you guys that lets you know the exact sort of elements that need to be present in your project description to receive full points. Please look at that closely. We also want to make sure that for especially our PSH projects that your bed dedication is at 100% dedication to the chronically homeless, because if not, they're not going to be eligible to apply for funds. So make sure that you look at that in your APR and make sure that all of your beds are indicated as being dedicated to the chronically homeless. Because I know we had a couple of weird bed dedication issues last year. So just make sure that if your bed is dedicated, that it's truly dedicated, and then that you're accurately reporting on the beds that you are dedicating.
And while we're at it, that you are using the updated definition of chronically homeless. Again, I'm not going to get into findings right now, but please make sure you are, one, using the updated definition and accurately documenting homeless status. If you are not and you get monitored, not only are we not serving our target populations, but you all will be required to pay funds back to HUD for serving ineligible participants.
Yes. And that can be, bad, as we all know. So I think that concludes the common errors from last year. I know we're also pushing up against 2:30, which is when this webinar is supposed to end, so I'm going to gracefully bow out here and hand it back to Cameron.
So I know that was a lot of information. I've got one announcement, but I do want to just check in with everyone on questions, concerns, comments. Like I said, we are going to be making a couple of updates to materials today before we post. We're going to get the new project score sheet, again, from last year up for those new projects just to be able to look at. Two, we're going to make it very clear on the new project evaluation and the new project application that we do not want, on August 8th, do not submit into eSNAPs, submit to us. So I want to make sure that that's crystal clear. So know that we're going to be making those updates. Again, all of these materials are on the website. We will have the date that we update any of the forms included, so it'll be very clear. And if you've printed out materials, you can look and see if you're using the most up-to-date forms. So those are the only updates we are intending to make today. So again, this is, at this time, unless HUD really throws us some curves, which wouldn't be out of line for this year so far, we're likely not going to have another webinar for the competition. As Caitlin said, we feel like as far as eSNAPs goes, the guidance that HUD provides is really very clear. As a former grantee, I mean, I had to use those guides every year, but as long as you go through them page by page, you should be okay. I see we have a couple questions coming in about the last item on the agenda. We're not quite there yet. I just want to hear any questions about the RFP, about the new requirements, about deadlines, about renewal evaluation, about project application. please let us know if you have any questions, and I'm going to give you all a couple minutes.
And I will say, if you prefer to ask your question verbally, go ahead and throw your hand up in the air using that little button that was found on your toolbar that looks like a hand, and I will let you know, and I will unmute you so you can ask your question verbally if that's your preferred mean of communication.
So y'all got this? You ready?
We must have just done a great job, Cameron. No questions. I'm sure. And I know it can sometimes take some time to process all the information, and you'll come up with questions later. We're, always available via email. There's also a lot of really great application materials out there that can help answer some of those questions. I know it's a lot, so.
A lot to digest, says Alonzo. Correct. Carol is asking if there's a county listed on the balance of state, how do we find out who the entity is? Carol, that listing is just the counties that are included in the balance of state. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a project in that area. Does that answer your question? Yes, okay, great. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to the last item. Thank you, Stanley. But if y'all have questions, keep them coming. We've got a few more minutes and we want to answer them. So the last item on the agenda is a HUD startup announcement. I've been waiting for HUD to be able to let you all know about this happening. So, I'm sorry? Oh, TA, well, we talked about it. So TA availability, I'm going to send out a doodle poll again. Please read your resources before you contact us, but we will have set times available for technical assistance, and of course, we'll be available for questions outside of that, but please read your resources. And as far as one of those weeks, which happens to be a week you all will be working hard on your applications, we are going to be out of the office in DC at the National Alliance to End Homelessness conference the week of July 25th. So we will still have limited access to email and phones, but we, especially this year, really need to take advantage of our time in DC. So just know that if you're trying to reach us that week, you may not hear back from us right away. So please, I hope you all, the pre-competition checklists were helpful, that this is helpful, that you all are working on this stuff. Just please note that that week we will have limited availability as far as, because, well, we're going to be learning from NEH on how to make the balance of state stronger. So I'm going to move on to HUD startup announcement. So again, this is something we've been in the works with HUD for a little while, and it looks like, well, not looks like, it's actually happening. Right now, we only know of 2 CoC HUD startup trainings, and I want to repeat, these are only for 2015 grantees, so you were awarded in the last competition. One of those sessions is going to be held before our conference, THN's Texas Conference on Ending Homelessness. It's going to be Tuesday, September 20th, before the conference starts. Attendance is required for CoC grantees and subs, not specifically to this startup, but to a startup. Right now, the only ones we are aware of are one in Fort Worth on September 13th and one in Austin on September 20th. You are welcome to contact your CPD rep to inquire about other opportunities, but as far as we know, this is it. our hope is that you all are coming to the conference and that this will be, a nice way to kind of tack that on to the conference and be able to do your startup prior to the beginning of the conference. I'm going to be sending out details on how to register and sign up. That's actually not going to be available until the 18th of July. I'll be sending that out again to all 2015 grantees today or tomorrow. And again, I'm just going to repeat this. To my knowledge, I only am aware of 2 startups. One in Fort Worth on September 13th, one in Austin on September 20th. And again, attendance at one of these sessions is required for grantees, sub-grantees, and is limited to 2 people per funded CoC agency. Both are going to be all-day sessions, and there will be a wait list, so there's limited capacity. So again, I'm going to get this out to you all as soon as possible. Does anybody have any questions about that? Yeah, I'm just going up from the bottom, killing it. Michelle warmly asked if there's one that's going to be in Houston. Can you attend that one? Yes, Michelle, but I have not been informed of any that are happening in Houston at this time. I would recommend you contact your CPD rep to ask, and good luck with that because their phones are still not working. Is the trip to Austin on 9/20 an eligible item under the CoC? Let us double check. Mary, I know it used to be, and I don't know that that's changed.
I haven't confirmed it.
Okay.
Generally have.
Yeah, so in the past, Michelle is asking if whether her CoC funding could pay for the trip to Austin for the startup. Again, in the past, that has been an eligible cost. There have been lots of changes, which is why we want you all to review all these materials. We will double check that, Michelle, and everyone before we send this out and have that information available to you. I think it could get tricky because even if it covers the startup, that would only potentially cover your travel to and from and that one day, but it still could benefit you if you're planning on attending the conference. So we will look into that, and when we send out this information, we will answer that question as well. I'm just looking. Any other questions or comments? We've got about 2 minutes. Okay, so if y'all have any questions, questions about locks and APR data for those renewal and reallocations can be sent to Caitlin. Again, all of the locks for review was sent out to projects yesterday. That seems like so long ago already. That is due Friday. APRs are due Friday. Letters of intent are due Friday. And letters of any projects who plan not to compete that are renewals or reallocations are due Friday, the 15th, 5 o'clock. And give us a few minutes here. We'll get a couple things updated on the website for you all. I guess, contact us with questions. We're here. We want to make this as simple as possible for you all and for us. We know this is a lot of work. We appreciate that and all of your hard work and the work you're providing to clients in our balance of state communities. And we really do feel like all of the changes we've made this year are only going to help us be stronger moving forward. And we're very intentional about those. So it is now 2:30. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I just want to thank you all again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing your letters of intent and reviewing your applications. And you all know where to find us, so thank you very much and have a great rest of the week.